Hi, my name is Jen, and welcome to the Spirit and Spice podcast. Today, we're going to talk about two different things. We're going to talk about being authentically you and that little voice inside of your head. So, a little while back, I had one of my dear friends came over, and she came over for tea, which I love tea, by the way. I think that a there's a cup of tea for every ailment, whether it just be, a hug in a mug or some sort of like herbal concoction to help with an ailment. I love tea. I'm a big proponent of tea. So, anywho, one of my girlfriends came over for tea, and she was like, "Hey, I really want to ask you a question." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, shoot." Like, I'm an open book. And she's like, "How are you unapologetically you?" And I was so taken back by what a compliment that was. And that may sound weird, but I cannot tell you, like, my teenage self, my young adult self, my young mommy self would have been just absolutely flabbergasted and proud to hear. So it was like all of these versions of myself were just healed and felt so validated and like, yay, whenever she said that. Um, Explanation. I have not always been unapologetically me. I've always been like my silly, goofy self to like my friends. Excuse me, I have to take a sip of tea. I've always been like my silly, goofy self, around like my loved ones and etc. But there's always been different versions of me. Like, just, how like we always wear different hats for different scenarios. But there was a lot of like my core self that I kept hidden. And I didn't allow others to know or see. And so I was very compartmentalized, I guess you could say. So for me, this was such a compliment because it was something that I have worked so hard on. And honestly, part of it was just out of desperation and need. And then another part of it was like, I'm older and I'm tired. And I don't want to have to keep up, this facade, I guess you could say. And, if people want to be in my life, well, they're going to get the full version of me and not some watered down version. And if they like it, cool. And if they don't, that's okay. I'm not everyone's cup of tea, and that's totally fine. So to take it back a little bit, I I am an extroverted introvert. I think that would be a way. This is obviously self proclaimed. People drain me for sure. So I'm not one of those people that is charged by being around other people. I love being around my chosen group that whom I love. Um, but even then, like, I really love my alone time. I think like a true extrovert is energized by being around other people. I'm actually drained. Even when, I do all the things to protect my energy, it's like if I have an event, well, I'm going to have 2 days of unpeopling afterwards. Or at least I try to do that. Um, so when I was younger, I was always a people pleaser. And honestly, I was a people pleaser up until like not too long ago. So like well into my 30s. And for me, I've done a lot of introspection, and I think that's the important part is like when you are a people pleaser, like I think it's like, okay, well, let's get down to the why. let's ask the serious, deep questions. Why are you a people pleaser? Why do you do that? And for me, it was definitely a lot of childhood wounds. Um, one could argue, because I am a woo-woo person. I look at my astrology, my natal chart, and my Chiron wound and there. And then just my childhood. I had a great childhood, but they're just like everyone. There was trauma, there was drama, and of course there's going to be wounds from that. Me personally, I had a wound of like not feeling like I was enough. And and it's interesting because I received so much love as a child, but there was definitely this need to want to prove myself, this like need to prove myself of like, hey, I'm not some dumb blonde. And that was like a chip on my shoulder that I had for a while. And it's interesting because if you are an astrological person, my Chiron, which is like the wounded, it's an asteroid, and it's the wounded healer in the natal chart. Natal chart, Natal, for anyone who's not familiar with it. And so my Chiron happens to be in my 12th house in the sign of Gemini. And so, it's very Mercurian. It's all about intelligence, communication, etc., etc. So that was one of my wounds, was all about communication. And here I am yammering into a microphone talking to anyone who will listen. And so, apparently I've worked my way through those wounds, and am sharing my experiences. But anywho, so back to the people pleasing. I'm going off on a tangent. So with the people pleasing, mine stemmed from what every, I think, human wants, right, is to be accepted, to be a part of, to be a part of the group, the even on like what were they called, like back in like the hunter and gatherers, like you wanted to be a part of that group. So I don't think my desire was any different than any others. I didn't want people to not like me, right? I wanted to nurture and to make people happy. And which is great. Those are great qualities as long as you don't allow them to affect yourself. And so back to astrology, my rising is Cancer. And so I am a nurturing person to begin with. But because of those people-pleasing tendencies, it became to a fault. I was putting other people's needs in front of mine. And we do that as, whenever our kids are little and we're new moms and stuff like that. But it seemed for me where it was like, oh my gosh, why am I doing this? Why am I self-sacrificing? Why am I constantly doing everything when I don't have to? And it's like, because I think when you get older, people start taking advantage of that. And, like those energy vampires of where they're like, oh, we'll just go ask Jen, she'll do it. And I did, and I would do it. And it's like, God, why? And so looking back, I'm like, come on, Jen, like you should have stood up for yourself. But it was a slow burn. Like I had to get to the point of where I was like, okay, enough of this shit. No more. I'm not going to do this anymore. And so I think everyone has to get to that point. But for me, mine was sort of, not escalated. What would the correct word be? It was like slingshot. Nope, that's not it either. It'll come to me like mid mid podcast. I'll be like, oh, that's the word. But anywho, for me, I think my accident was the catalyst. That's the word, was the catalyst for it, of where I'm like, I was so broken. Okay, now you can no longer take care of yourself. So how are you going to do all these things for all these other people when you can't even do for you? And that was like, bottom of the pit, like, okie dokie, how am I gonna do this now? And so through healing physically, that helped me heal mentally too, of it's okay to say no. As the expression goes, no is a complete sentence. And I think that's one of the most powerful things that we are really embracing. And I know that this affects both sexes, but I feel truly that like women fall into this people pleasing tendency a lot more than men, and not all women. I grew up with a girl that had no freaking problem telling you exactly what she thought, and no, and I always admired her about it. I was like, oh damn, yeah, she knows what she wants. So then that leads into, being your authentic self and not caring what other people thought. So just like the girl that I grew up with that had no problem speaking her mind, she could give two shits what you thought of her. She was not about to do something that she didn't want to do. And there's a beautiful power behind that. Now, granted, like I don't think you need to be rude by any means. I don't think that any human needs to be rude. It even when you stand up for yourself, you don't have to be rude. For me, that just makes me feel even worse. It might feel really good in the moment, but then afterwards, like I'm really like, oh, I was a jerk. I shouldn't have said that. But so anyways, to go back to not doing what it is that you truly want to do. And I'm not talking about, things that, make us good people or like, healthy habits or anything like that. Like I'm talking about people taking advantage of you and your energy for their gain. Or just like making you feel bad to do something that you really don't want to do. Like I, don't want to go to XYZ event. And, so I'm like, well, come on, like you always go, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, I don't want to. In the words of our daughter, I can't want to. And when our daughter was little, whenever she didn't want to do something, we'd be like, hey, kitty cat, can you go do, go do something. Go clean up your Barbies. Nah, I can't want to. And she wasn't doing it disrespectfully. It was just, no, she didn't want to clean them up. I mean, would she? Yes, eventually. But it was just, whenever she would say that, we would crack up laughing. And it's become this like family saying of like, nah, I can't want to. And it's such a beautiful, just amazing saying of, so like when next time you're asked to do something and you feel obligated to say yes, but every little cell in your body is like, no, don't do it. That's your body screaming, your authentic self screaming, I can't want to. Because it's not that you can't, you can't want to and don't want to go. Anywho, so it brings us to being our authentic selves. And what's really fascinating that I have found is whenever, shedding those layers and saying, okay, well, I don't need to wear this facade anymore. I think one of the main parts of it is being okay with rejection. And again, it's one of those just really, it goes against all, like our whole being of, well, we don't want to be rejected. We want to be a part of the group, right? Like that's our, we have to be part of the group to survive, like that whole survival instinct that we have as humans, not wanting to be left out, etc., etc. But it's okay. It's okay. Um, if you are, I have learned that if you are your true self, if you just allow yourself to be you, not only are you giving others permission to live their lives authentically, um, you know, they'll see you and say, "Oh, well, look at Jen. Like Jen's being her little weirdo self. Like I can be my little weirdo self too." Yes, yes, you can. And you should be. Like, you should just be your total little self. And if whoever is going to love you is going to love you, and whoever is not going to love you is not going to love you. And you being this fake person is not worth it. You putting up this facade and being, one person around this group of people just to appease them. Well, that is some wasteful energy. Like I'm too tired for that. I don't want to be around those people. Like I don't want to be around people that I can't be myself with. That's exhausting. It begs the question, well, okay, how do you get there? How do you get to the point of where you don't mind if others, don't like you? And I think that's where it's like, okay, well, you have to be okay with rejection. You have to be okay with the most important thing, and that is you loving yourself. And if you love yourself, it won't matter what other people think about you, because once we start healing all of those inner wounds, we realize that so many people's actions actions towards us are truly just projections of their own insecurities. Now, I'm not saying that's like, always, but a lot of the times, as I was in this healing journey, it's a continuous thing, right? But as I really started, like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I can't be this people pleaser. I can't keep sacrificing myself. And then eliminating those energies that just drain on you. Saying no, standing up for yourself, letting the facade fall down, all of this stuff. Once you start doing that, you really start loving who you are, because you're allowing that little kid inside of you to be what they always wanted to be that bright little spunky spirit before it was deadened by the world around them and societal norms, right? And so that leads me to our inner voice. A couple years ago, I learned that not everyone has, I guess it's been a little bit more than a couple years ago, maybe around COVID, so like 5 years ago, learned that not everyone has an internal dialogue, as far as like a narrator inside of their head. Like it's my voice that I hear inside of my head, but not everyone has that. And I remember, what? That is, wow, that is so crazy because I have always had a narrator in my head just constantly narrating everything and anything and just all day long. And so to those that don't have an internal dialogue or an internal narrator, I had one of my friends, like she said that it's like when she's not actively thinking about something, it's just quiet in her head. And I was so blown away. And I was like, it's like quiet. And she's like, yeah. I was like, oh my gosh. That blew my mind because I don't think I had ever had a quiet moment in my head. And I'm like, well, how do you think? Because she was an absolute genius. And so I was like, well, how do you come up with like all of these like creative things? And she's like, oh, well, like I see them. So she would visually see them in her mind. But she didn't have that internal narrator. So if you don't have an internal like dialogue or that narrator, how would you explain it? So if you don't mind, just like write down in the comments. I would love to know. Okay, so back to the little voice in your head, that internal dialogue. I read this sometime and I can't remember where I read it or where I heard it from, but it was one of those things that stuck with me and I was just like, oh, that is profound. My internal dialogue used to be so mean. Like that little inner voice was just, oh, she was full of anxiety and was just really, really hard, like on me. I was super hard on myself. You growing up in the 90s, of like, oh, you're fat. Look at your belly. And like dude, I wonder if we could go back in history if like then well, I guess the 60s were pretty, they had Twiggy as the model, but I don't know, even then, I think 90s like norms, societal norms of what a woman's body should look like were probably the most devastating and traumatizing for the girls that grew up during like the 80s and 90s. I don't know. I would love to find a study on that. But anywho, so, just this like this constant negative inner voice. And so one day I read something or I heard something where this person said, would you be friends with that person inside of your head? So let's pretend that voice in your head was an actual physical person. Would you be friends with them? And I thought about that and I was like, holy shit, no, they're mean. Like they're real mean. And then it went on to, well, then why are you allowing them to live rent-free in your head? Maybe it was Eckhart Tolle. Maybe he was the one that said that. I'll have to look back. He said some pretty profound things. But I just remember being so dumbfounded. And I'm like, yeah, they're right. Why am I allowing this entity all of this space in my head when they do not deserve to be there? I wouldn't let an enemy talk to me like that, but here I am allowing myself to talk to me like that. And so I think once you recognize that or get to that point, that's when change starts happening, right? Because we're humans. We don't want to change. Change is crappy. It's hard. It requires work. None of us want to do that. But once it gets to that point of like, okay, you have to do something about it, then that's when we do something about it finally. But for me, like to you, if you have a negative voice in your head, this isn't going to happen overnight, but the next time you do something, you're like, oh God, that was dumb. Like, you know what? No, that wasn't, okay. That was a silly mistake, but that's fine. I'm going to learn from it. I'm not going to do it next time. Start replacing it with that that passive voice. Or I told one of my friends this. I'm like, give that voice a name. Just think of a name that would personify that ugliness, right? So I always think about the movie Just Go With It whenever Jennifer Aniston's kids name their human excrement Devlin. After the mean girl that was in the sorority with Jennifer Aniston's character. And so, like, even if you have to name that mean inner voice Devlin, like, no, Devlin, yeah, do not talk to me that way. You're not going to you're not going to be mean to me. I'm not going to allow you to disrespect me and move on. And so once we start correcting that inner voice, once we start recognizing that rumination of, like, you know, say you have a fight that just replays and replays and replays in your mind, or that time you did something like stupid, or you felt like you thought it was stupid, and honestly probably no one even noticed, or if they did, like one person did, and they were like, that was stupid, and then they've never thought about it ever again, but it just haunts you, right? And like, it's like that 2 a.m. thought when you're laying there and you're like, oh my God, the time that I had my dress stuck in my underwear, and the whole people saw it. Like, they saw it. And, like, that is, just constantly replaying a bad thing. Well, when we do that, there's actually a science behind it that I'm probably going to totally butcher. But the science behind replaying those bad memories or those bad thoughts, that rumination, whenever you replay something in your mind over and over and over again, well, it's going to set those neural pathways to strengthen them, like, even more. And there's actually studies now that are coming out about linking like rumination to dementia. And so that's like something else I'm constantly, like, in my head, like, oh, don't think about that too much. Let's create a new neural pathway of a positive experience. So mindset is huge. I had my great grandmother was this little teeny tiny thing, and I remember as like a 3-year-old, I just thought she was the cutest little old lady ever. She had white hair and these blue eyes, and she was just so little. And she couldn't hardly move. She was in so much pain, but she was the sweetest little thing. And she always had a positive attitude, which I loved. I love. We can't always have a positive attitude because shitty things happen. And that's okay. But it's, how do you get past that experience? How do you get past that hiccup? I think that matters. Okay, so, like, summary to wrap this up, because I could probably just go on and on and on about this forever. But the next time that you notice yourself sacrificing your needs, your wants, your personal desires, what would it be? Like, your character, in order to appease someone else, really take a step back and ask yourself, why am I doing this? Why? And then, like, ask yourself, like, who is it that I want to be? Do I want to continue being this person that is a watered down version of me, or do I want to live freely and fully the person that I was born to be? There's such a beauty in finding that, and and then also like recognizing that we're constantly evolving too. So like I am not the person I was 5 years ago. I am definitely not the person I was 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Um, I am so thankful for that. And I hope that I will just continue to love the person that I become more and more and more, because I can tell you, like, I thought I liked myself, but I was very hard on myself. And I didn't like who I was. She wasn't really me, right? But once I allowed myself to finally be me, to fully dress the way I want to, talk about the things that I want to, be the little weirdo that I am, and allow others to see that, talk unabashedly about astrology and woo woo and, my spiritual beliefs and aliens and whatever else, all of the mysteries of the universe. As soon as I allowed myself to open up with that, those people that were like fair weather friends, like they just sort of kind of went away. And it was beautiful. It was such a gift, because then these other people came into my life that are like-minded. And I love my group of people. Like, they're just amazing, and I'm constantly inspired and in awe of them. And that's like another thing, is that like, if it's not meant for you, why are you still hanging on to it? I'm giving you permission to give yourself permission to be you. If you need that, you don't need it. You don't need my permission. You don't need anyone's permission. But in case you do, you want just that little like please stop holding back. Stop being the watered down version of you. Again, no is a complete sentence. The next time like you have that mean inner dialogue, be like, hey, Devlin, listen, I know you're cranky. Maybe you should go eat a Snickers bar. But listen, I'm not going to allow you to talk to me like that. And then instead, replace it with something nice. So, say that inner Devlin says, like, oh, look at you tripped on the sidewalk, you dumbass. Be like, oh, Devlin, you need to go eat a Snickers. And then, replace it with, oh, that was so silly. I just tripped on the sidewalk. Oh my goodness. And then move on with your day. Like, there's no need to sit there and allow yourself to talk bad to yourself. And it's really hard at first, and it's actually fascinating about how often you will notice that inner voice being so negative. At least for me, I was always thought like I was like a cheery person, and then but that inner voice was so negative. And once I started recognizing it, and the first step is always recognition. So, but like once you start recognizing it, and you're like, oh wow, I talk to myself really mean like all the time, and so once you start recognizing the inner Devlin, then you can start saying, okay, Devlin, no. And then eventually, like I don't have a mean inner voice like anymore. It's and granted, like I said, like it's taken years, but very rarely does that inner Devlin come out. And whenever she does, I say, it's okay. Like I'm human. I make mistakes, and that's okay. I'm going to learn from this and go on my merry way. So I hope everyone has a fantastic day, and